Welcome to the Endure Hunt Podcast. Join me as I share my experiences as an emergent hunter, offer advice on how to overcome challenges and pursue your passion for hunting. This is episode 34 of the podcast, How I Started Bowhunting at 26 years old. And I wanted to share this story because I started this podcast to share my journey, the lessons that I've learned, in hopes of inspiring and helping other people that are coming from a similar background as me, who didn't grow up as hunters, who didn't grow up in hunting families, who have an interest in it, get into it. And this is going to be one of those stories where I went in head first trying to figure it out because I got the bug and needed to just find a way of doing it. I hope that if nothing else, by the end of this, you have some inspiration to get going, hearing my story about getting started with bow hunting. Or if you're listening to this and you're already a full-fledged hunter, maybe there's someone in your life that you know that has been considering it, who you feel would benefit from it. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, I am Andrew Lukosevic. If someone sent this to you, thank you. In 2017, I was deployed basically the entire year. I had no hunting experience at that point. I loved the outdoors. I loved hiking. I had done a few days on the Appalachian Trail, and that's about the experience that I had outside of being in the military. My buddy Peter, his wife, got him a hunting trip in Southwest Montana on an elk and mule deer combination tag. She went through an outfitter to help with the application, but this was a fully DIY hunt. He had been hunting. He grew up in a hunting family, but had no experience actually going out west and hunting for elk or mule deer. All of his experience was basically whitetail deer, and he didn't want to do it by himself. He did not know anyone that he felt would be up for the challenge of going out to Montana. And this was a November hunt, so it was a relatively late season hunt, and it was cold and snowy. But that hunt, so anyway, I decided to join him. And that hunt was amazing. We came back with nothing other than great experiences and memories. If you want to hear all about that hunt, it's episode 8. I will link it in the show notes. It's called Back to the Beginning. Peter and I, it's a joint podcast. We break everything down. We just talk about the hunt, what we learned from it, those valuable experiences. But for me, that was the thing that cemented that I need to be doing this as often as possible and as long as I can. And I wish I found hunting sooner. And that was what I came away from after that Montana trip. It was beautiful. It was challenging, and there's just nothing quite like it. I got the hunting bug after that. So I get home, and at the time I lived in New Jersey. I knew that if I wanted to become at least decent at hunting, I would have to hunt the state that I lived in. This is where the crossroads comes from. I either needed to hunt in Pennsylvania with Peter. I lived in New Jersey at the time, but that was a 2-hour drive, and I wouldn't be able to do it consistently. It would be weekend hunts outside of work. It'd be impossible for me to do anything before or after work. Or I needed to learn a new weapon system. As the title suggests, I decided to get into bow hunting. And there's a few reasons why. And this is why I think most people, if they have no hunting experience, should start with a bow. It gave me the longest season possible. The New Jersey bow hunting season is about 6 months if you hunt every season, including the late season. I could practice in my backyard, although I really shouldn't have. That's a story that I will tell on this podcast later. And it also gave me the most options for places to hunt in the state. Well, considering I had just figured out, okay, bow hunting is the path that I am going to take. Well, what's next? I have never shot a bow. I have never done anything like that. And I did not know where to start. I didn't have a lot of money. My wife and I weren't married yet. We were saving up for our wedding. So I was looking for the easiest and cheapest way possible to get a bow in my hands and see whether or not I even liked it. I wanted to try it out before committing because I just didn't want to spend a bunch of money on a bow if I was going to end up sucking it up and figuring out how to do a muzzleloader. So I went on Google, as most things do, and started searching for archery clubs and found an archery club that had a sort of open night. I want to say it was every other Friday, something like that. It was $10 a person, and you would go in and they would teach you how to use a bow. And these bows were nothing special. I mean, they're at most 30 pounds of pressure, and you're not even using a release. It's all finger. You pull it back and hold it and shoot. Very weak, not consistent whatsoever. But my wife and I both went. She came because she was also interested in trying this out with me, and we loved it. Honestly, we had such a great time. It was a lot of fun. It wasn't that difficult just to get started. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's that difficult, but as you grow in competency, your criteria for what is good changes and goes up. But for all things considered, with these cheap bows with no release aid, we were consistently hitting the target, and that was a start. It was probably at about 20 yards. Eliminated muzzleloaders at this point, made the decision going all in on bow hunting. The reason that archery club hosts those nights is because they want to add new members. They want to introduce new people, which is great. You know, I host this podcast because I want to introduce new people to hunting. I understand. But I didn't want to join the club. I'm sure now that there would be hunters in that club. But back then, I just assumed, because it was the state of New Jersey, that those people were strictly traditional archery people. So I wanted to do it my own way. I'm also very stubborn, so there's that. But now that I like the bow, I need to get one of my own. I need to learn it, tune it, figure out how to refine my shots. And I started looking all over the place. Well, unfortunately for me, there are no bow shops anywhere near where I live. The closest one was at least an hour away. And I knew that I would not go there consistently. So what I found was a Dick's Sporting Goods. Now, I ended up buying just about everything for this hunting season from Dick's Sporting Goods. I have no idea. I'm pretty sure they don't sell hunting stuff anymore. But back then they did. I got the bow, arrows, release, targets, field points, broadheads. We ended up getting pop-up blinds, tree stands, climbing sticks. I'm sure there's more, but that's all I can think of right now. And we got pretty cheap stuff. I'm going to be honest. We got the bow, the quiver, the arrows, broadheads, release, 2 setups, because my wife and I both did it for about $600 or $700 for both setups. We were lucky that the day we went in to do it, the only person in the entire store that knows anything about setting up bows was there, because he helped us get everything set up. Was not perfect, but he got everything set up, showed us how to use it, and let us take practice shots. The bow that I got is the same one that I still have to this day, the Diamond Edge SB1. I don't remember what the release was. I don't remember the arrows. I do remember that the broadheads were Rage. I took my first deer, the one that is right over my shoulder, that if you're watching, I'm pointing to right now. I took that deer with this bow in its stock setup with those crappy arrows and that Rage broadhead. So after getting comfortable with the bows in the shop, asking that guy questions, we head home, and then came the daunting task of figuring out what to do next. Did not want to or have money to become a member of that archery club. I also wanted to be able to shoot when I wanted, how I wanted, and as often as I wanted to. And going to the club wasn't necessarily going to be it. So there were a couple of things that I started doing. I figured I could shoot my bow in my yard. I had enough space that I could shoot about 30 yards. But I also found that New Jersey has wildlife management areas. You can hunt these areas, but some of them also have ranges for archery and shotgun and rifle. And it's free as long as you have a hunting license. So my thought was, okay, I could probably shoot in my yard to 20 and 30 yards. If I wanted to shoot to 40 and 50, which I had a 4-pin sight, so the max I could go was 50 yards. If I wanted to max out the bow, I would need to go to the wildlife management area and do that. outdoor range, just some basically like straw targets that are compressed with like a tarp thrown on top of them, but it was good enough. The thing was, I kept thinking I don't have access to a bow shop, a pro shop. And I'm pretty confident the guy from Dick's Sporting Goods, he's good for helping us get it set up. But I don't think that if we go back there and ask them to put on new equipment that they would do it. So I needed to figure out how I could learn this stuff myself. And that is when I started going down YouTube University. There's a few resources that, there's a lot on, you can learn a lot from YouTube. But the two resources that helped me the most when I was getting started were John Dudley's School of Knock. So for me, this is what helped me figure out what all of the different pieces were, the components of the compound bow system, how to maintain them, replace them, tune them, anything you could think of. He does have videos about it. And then when it came to hunting itself, specifically for whitetail deer, I relied on the Hunting Public's videos. I went in and became obsessed with watching their videos because they actually talk you through things. The thing that so many videos lack, in my opinion, that are hunting videos are explaining why you're doing certain things or what you're looking for or what the sign is. And the Hunting Public doesn't really hold anything back. They go through everything. So if I could only give you two resources to try and look if you're where I was and you want to figure out how to maintain your bow and where to get started with hunting whitetail deer specifically, those are the two resources. I will have them both in the show notes. So after spending way too much time watching YouTube videos and not enough time practicing, I decided, maybe I should practice what I preach. Maybe I should actually get out and start shooting my bow all the time. So I started shooting in my yard. And this is the cautionary statement. I probably should not have been shooting in my yard. With the layout that I had, basically any direction I'd shoot, I'm either shooting towards someone's house or the street. Now, I'm not an idiot. I was in the Marines and I know something about shooting backstops. I know about the weapons safety rules, and I treated my bow the same way I would treat a rifle. When first starting to shoot, the safest direction we had was towards our shed. I figure if I went through the shed, it wouldn't get through both sides, then through the fence behind it, then wherever the person is. So the setup that I had in the beginning, 2 garbage cans in front of my shed with the targets in front of the garbage cans, and it was only 10 yards. Not great, but it works. And yes, I definitely missed at least a couple of times and hit the garbage cans. Never did hit the shed, although I did hit the fence on one shot at a further distance, but fortunately did not go through. I also lost 1 arrow in the ground. All of that to say, shooting a bow in your yard can be incredibly dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. Going back, I would still do it. But I think what I would say to myself is you need to get so good at 10 yards before you go to 15 or 20. I got okay at shooting at 10 yards and then immediately went to 20 yards because I wanted to use it. I wanted to use that sight pin the appropriate way as I thought in my head. But I realized that the repetitions matter the most. The building good form and shooting consistently is what you need to do. If you get in a lot of reps, you practice with good form, even if it's only at 10 yards, you're still going to be in good shape. The most important thing is practicing and good practicing, not just flinging arrows for the sake of flinging arrows. You want to make sure that you have the right posture, that your shoulder's the right way, that you're being consistent with your anchoring points. So if you are like I was, living in a tight suburban area, which I no longer am, I have plenty of space to shoot now, but back then I was. So if you're like me and you live in a suburban area and you don't necessarily have a lot of space, have a good backstop, shoot in a safe direction, even if that means you can only shoot 10 yards. The more you shoot, the safer you shoot, the better you will become quicker. Now, that being said, I shot just about every day. My mindset was, as it was with hunting, I want to do it as often as possible to build my comfort and my skills. I felt like Hunting as much as possible and shooting as much as possible would increase my luck surface area and would help me find success on my hunting journey. So at this point, I have the bow, I've been practicing, I've done some research on hunting, what to look for, and I have some hunting gear. So now it's time for me to prepare to actually hunt. The gear that I used in the beginning was the cheapest stuff possible. Like I said, I got it from Dick's Sporting Goods. Initially, we had a ladder stand, which those are not fun to set up by yourself in the woods, let me tell you. I also had a hang on stand with some cheap climbing sticks. And this was all the cheapest stuff I could find when it was on sale at Dick's Sporting Goods. I did not care how much it weighed. I did not care how inconvenient it was. All I wanted to do was get in the field. That was the most important thing for me at the time. And if you're just starting out, to be honest, that should be the thing for you. Don't invest too much money in the best gear. I mean, look, if you have the funds to do it and it's not going to hurt you, go for it. Don't let gear be the reason that you don't hunt, though. For me, money was tight and I needed to get out in the field as much as I could. I also got the cheapest trail cameras I could find, and I used Onyx, which I still use to this day. I love Onyx. If you've never used Onyx before, or Go Hunt Maps or whatever other mapping tool. Essentially, you use it for waypoints and you can mark spots where you see sign, animals, trails, where you're putting your gear and equipment. They're incredibly helpful. Now I have to pick the spot. Unfortunately, New Jersey has a decent amount of state land, believe it or not. Now, that might sound strange, but it does. Nothing like out west, but better than Texas. I can tell you that from experience. I had multiple places that I could hunt within 40 minutes of where I lived. In the beginning, I wanted to reduce the friction, reduce the barriers. And I think this should be true for anyone getting started, in my opinion. You need to make it as easy as possible, because the more barriers and friction that you have to overcome, the less time you're going to spend hunting because of the amount of cognitive power it will take to get you out there, especially in the beginning. Well, no, at first, pure motivation will get you going, but after a few hunts of not seeing anything and making mistakes, if there's a lot of barriers for you to get out there, you're probably not going to do it. So I would encourage you to try and find a place as close as possible to where you live so that you actually go. And that's one of the big reasons why I didn't hunt with Peters. A 2 hour drive to then sit in the stand for a period of time just to either drive home or spend the night at his house and do it again. There was just a lot involved in me doing that in the beginning. So I wanted to stay close to the house and hunt as much as I could. And ultimately, I picked not the closest spot to my house. It was actually a spot about 10 minutes away that I could live or I could hunt at. But I picked one that was about 20 minutes, 25 minutes away. And it was what I thought was the perfect combination of size and variety of habitat. It had open fields, tree rows, dense trees. It looked like there was a lot of opportunity for deer to move around, bed, there was water. It seemed, in my opinion, to have everything that they could possibly want. The other benefit was this piece of state property was actually on my way to work or from work. If I had an opportunity to leave work early, I would be able to hunt after work some days. And I did. This was pre-COVID, so I was commuting every single day I went into the office. Now, with my spot picked, it was scouting time. I definitely did summer scouting. At that point, I knew nothing. You can watch all of the YouTube videos you want on e-scouting and finding sign, but nothing is the same until you actually put your boots on the ground on the place where you're going to hunt. And I'll be honest, all I wanted to do was see deer. When I bumped a deer, it was like the best scouting day ever. Like, huzzah, there's deer here. Finally, I found something. Yes, I was that bad. When I did bump deer, put it in Onyx, mark those waypoints. I know that they hang out there. And then essentially what I was doing was I was looking for trails and droppings. I'm not great at identifying food sources. Even to this day, I am not the best at figuring out what the different food sources are. I am way better now than I was then. But I was looking for the more obvious signs. Animals themselves, looking for game trails, looking for droppings. Those were kind of the three things that I was looking for. And I was basing it, trying to refine my searching on habitat. So I wanted to find travel areas that looked like they could be near places where I thought they might feed, like big open fields or browse. And knowing that deer like to hang out on edge habitat, I was really concentrating my searches on those areas. My background is a lot of critical thinking and analytical thinking, and it's easy to go down rabbit holes and get stuck with analysis paralysis. So I very much tried not to do that. I walked all over the place and just marked spots on Onyx. Then I looked at the map and saw the places that had the highest concentrations of waypoints. And that's where I started. Threw trail cameras up at some areas where I thought I might see deer moving by and figured that I would get my stand set up. I checked those cameras once a week, every week, and moved them if they did not find anything. I had a few potential spots that I could think of, but I wanted to focus on areas where I was getting consistent deer on camera. And then I tried to pay attention to the direction they were coming from, the times of day they were coming from, where it looked like they were going to. And then I used all of that to basically adjust my setup. I also leveraged in season scouting. Trail cameras only tell you so much, and I know some states have them banned now, but they were really helpful for me in the beginning because I had no idea what I was doing and I was just blind sitting in a stand. Ultimately, we had to move our setup multiple times. I want to say we had to make 3 different adjustments before we finally found ones where we were getting consistent deer action throughout the season. With summer ending and the hunting season starting, continuing to do the near daily practice, and we did all of our scouting, got our setups, had our spots picked out. Hunting season's coming around the corner, so it's time to get hunting. I hunted as much as possible. I was in the stand basically every weekend and as many days after work as I could be. My wife would join me on the weekends. Her job did not allow her time after work to hunt, but we both were out there a lot, as much as we could. And there's a military thinking framework that I'm going to talk about. It's called the OODA loop. If you've never heard of it before, it stands for observe, orient, decide, and act. And essentially, the idea is you should be observing the things that are going on around you, figure out where you are in relation to the things that are going on around you, decide what to do based on that information, and then act on it. The premise is the quicker you can make adjustments based on your surroundings and what's going on, the more likely you are to win. Now, this was meant for dogfighting, and dogfighting is in fighting in as pilots, not dogs. Making sure that distinction is clear. But I apply the OODA loop to just about everything, and I was applying it here in the stand. And if we had multiple sits where there was no sign, there was no anything, I couldn't hear anything, I couldn't see anything, I didn't bump anything, we moved on. We found another spot. We kept moving. We kept iterating. It was a pain in the ass because the stands and equipment that we had, they were not easy for moving. So picking up and moving them to new spots was awful, but it was worth it. If we did not do that, I don't think that we would have found success. So I credit the willingness to be wrong and adjust. I credit that to our ability to find success. My wife and I had multiple shots on deer. Unfortunately, only I was able to find success, at least in New Jersey. She has since taken many deer. Throughout the hunting season, we tried many different methods. We used pop-up blinds together, pop-up blinds separately. We both sat in different tree stands where we were not near each other, close to each other. We had to move our setups at least 3 or 4 times. Then, on top of trying to figure it out, learning the hard way, making all sorts of mistakes, all of our gear got stolen. Trail cameras. Actually, that's not true. They did not steal the ladder stand, which I don't blame them. But they stole the hang-up stands, the hang-on stands, the climbing sticks, the trail cameras. They stole all of that. I went to go and hunt one day after work, just before the rut, like November 8th, maybe. And that was probably later than that, like November 10th. But whatever. Went to go and hunt just to show up to my tree with there being nothing on it. They took everything. That was a gut punch. I was angry, disappointed, and knew that the next week ahead was the best week of the season, which made me think that it was another hunter who wanted less competition in the woods. Which, side note, don't be that person. We need advocates for the resource, and this guy is an asshole. Whoever they are, I never found out. I never got my stuff back. You're the wrong kind of person. You don't deserve to be in the woods. But anyway, I went back to faithful Dick's Sporting Goods and bought the cheapest stuff I could get. Again, refusing to give up, although I adjusted my tactics this time. And this is the advice that I'll give you, and I do this to this day on public land now. I exclusively use hang-on stands with climbing sticks. I go as high as possible, and I only leave one climbing stick, at most two, depending on how high up I am in the tree. So as I come down, I take down my bottom 2 or 3 climbing sticks. This way, if someone wants to steal it, they're going to have to work really hard to get it. And when I put my trail cameras up, I bring a climbing stick with me. I get on the climbing stick, climb up the tree, and put the trail camera in the tree, pointed down, angled on the trail, or whatever I'm trying to put it on. This way, it's not easy to steal. I did that in New Jersey, did that in Texas, and I'm going to do the exact same thing in Tennessee. It's unfortunate, but there are always those people out there. So get the new gear, go out, same setups, same locations. Did not move the locations because they were damn good spots. And then November 16th, 2019, cold, bitter morning, blasting winds, freezing rain and snow. This deer behind me, if you're watching on either Spotify video or YouTube, this deer shows up. Shows up before shooting light, right under my wife's stand. And she is like so before shooting light that she doesn't even have her bow in the stand. She just put her butt down and was starting to pull it up the rope. And she freezes with the bow midair because she sees movement and realizes that there's a deer. And then only as he looks away does she finish pulling it up. And then she finally gets set up just to realize it's a buck. And he's walking away from her, but towards me. And it's too early for her to shoot. She doesn't have anything set up yet. So she just sits and waits. And fortunately for me, by the time he gets over to me, which was maybe 30 minutes later, full legal light, sun's out, still freezing and windy. But I was able to take my shot at about 20 yards, and the Rage did what the Rage does. I have not used a Rage since because it got really bent up I think it bounced off of his shoulder bone or something. Maybe it bounced off a rib. I'm not sure, but it got really bent up. He ran 50 yards and then piled over. It's hard to explain the feeling that you feel when you have your first success, especially after a hard season. I started hunting August, and I went August, September, October, halfway through November. And at that point, I had probably missed half a dozen shots, got so nervous. My wife missed a few shots. And you start to think it's never going to happen, that maybe you shouldn't do it. Maybe you should give up. And thank God I'm stubborn, because if I wasn't, I don't think that I would have stuck through it. It's hard. Everything in life is always harder than you think it's going to be. It's going to take longer than you want. It's going to be more work than you think it's going to be. And that doesn't mean that it's not worth doing. Hunting has changed my life. It is the one thing that I think about all of the time, even in the middle of this move where I am knee deep in house renovations work. I'm still thinking about hunting and this podcast and what can I do to help people get in and how can I get involved in the space locally. This first success showed me that I could do it. And to me, that was all I needed to know, that I can keep going. If I went the entire season and wasn't able to figure it out and wasn't improving the quality of the interactions that I was having with deer and the shot opportunities I was having, I don't know that I would have continued going. but I did. And he is, to this day, the deer that I am most proud of, the animal that I am most proud of. I share this story, like I said at the very beginning of this podcast, in hopes that it helps someone else realize they can do it too. That is my mission. I want to help as many people get into hunting as possible. People like me, I mean, anyone, but really people like me who did not grow up in a hunting family, who have interests in it, but don't know where to start. They don't know anyone who hunts. I want to help those people. So if you are that person, here are some of the key takeaways. Or if you're not that person and you just want to hear my key takeaways anyway, if you've made it this far in the podcast, you're listening, so I appreciate you. But these are my key takeaways that I have from that first season by myself, figuring it out and learning the hard way. Embrace mistakes. You are going to make a lot of them. Each one is an opportunity for you to figure out how to get better. You did something wrong, that's okay. Use it as a learning opportunity, become a better hunter. Reduce as many friction points as possible when you're getting started. You can't fill the tag from the couch, as they say. And I know who I am, and maybe you're not this kind of person, but even when it comes to going to the gym, if it's a drive, I'm probably not going to do it. The gym that I go to today is a 5-minute drive from my house. I am not exaggerating. I could run there if I wanted to. I did that on purpose. I don't like driving to go do things. So figure out what those barriers are, what those friction points are that might keep you out of the woods, and try to mitigate them as much as you can so that you spend as much time as possible in the woods hunting, learning. Which leads me to my third takeaway. Get as many repetitions in as possible. In the heat of the moment, you are going to fall to the level of your training. You are not going to rise to the occasion. You want to be as comfortable with your weapon as you can, whether you do choose to go with a bow, a muzzleloader, a rifle. It doesn't matter. You need to be comfortable. Even if you're shooting perfectly at the range, out of your stand in your yard, if you can do that, when there's an animal under you, that group's going to expand. The next takeaway is be willing to change. Don't get married to the first spot you pick. It's probably not the right one. You might need to adjust the spot, the way you access the spot. You have to be willing to be wrong and make changes in the middle of the hunting season. It's okay. Even if you blow out some deer, there will be more and some will come back. It's all right. The next takeaway is to just get started. Hunting has changed my life, and I want more people to do it. I want them to feel what I felt and still feel to this day, and I hope that feeling never goes away. Take the smallest action today that you can to get started. I think when it comes to goal setting, we often look at the final result and we don't look at getting closer and doing the actions. My goal was obviously to get a deer, but I didn't expect to do that day one. I broke it down into actions. The way I presented this podcast, it's sort of the method, and that's the idea. Pick a weapon, learn how to use it, do research online and figure out how to hunt. Get all of the gear that you need. Go into the field and start looking for stuff. Get your stuff set up. Start hunting. That's a brief summary of all the different steps, but take the first step. If you don't have a bow and you want to bow hunt and you're not sure if you're going to like it, do what I did. Find an archery club. Find a bow shop that will let you try it out. Often bow shops, the ones that I've experienced since leaving New Jersey, have like training nights and events where they have people come in and they teach them and talk to them about archery. Do the minimum thing that you can do right now to get you closer to your ultimate goal, which would likely be hunting success. But the longer you delay the first action, the more difficult it's going to be. So take the first step. The last takeaway is have fun. It's, if you put too much pressure on yourself and you're not enjoying it, you're not going to keep doing it. And what's the point of doing it in the first place? Make sure you have fun along the way and enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it, don't do it. that is my story of how I got started bow hunting at 26 years old. I hope you enjoyed it. I'd love it if you could share this podcast with someone who you think would benefit from it. I'd love to connect with them, talk to them, answer their questions, and help them along the way. I'm going to be doing a sort of series with the podcast coming up, more focused on Western hunting, but I wanted to start with this episode because this was the beginning. This was the real catalyst for me continuing to do it. It would have been easy for me to go in Montana and just never hunt again. But this year, 2019 hunting season, was the one that helped push me and know that I could do it. And ultimately, I think my specialty, what I am really good at, is going out west, figuring out how to get through the applications and helping people get out west. So I'm going to be doing a series breaking down Western hunting, and that is going to come up starting with the next episode. If you made it all the way here, thank you so much for listening. Time is our most valuable asset, and I do not take it for granted that you chose to spend it with me. I very much appreciate you. Hope you enjoyed my story, and I'll see y'all next time.